Welcome to the Sleeping Barber Podcast.
Bum, bum, bum. Post-pod.
Cat got my tongue. Let's go. My goodness. I wanted to say something, but my brain was just like,
Not firing.
not doing it.
Yeah.
Not doing it.
You might say your
goodness.
tongue was dull.
Yes. It
So-
was
Adam Morgan.
Adam Morgan.
We had a great conversation with him, I thought.
Do you remember when we first came across that study on the cost of doll? And I remember we were talking about it at the time. It's like, this makes sense. This
Yeah.
makes sense. And especially after the conversation we had with John Evans and
Orlando.
I always want to say Orlando Bloom.
I know, I do the same thing.
It's not Orlando
I
Bloom.
do that like, mental Rolodex. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
No, not the actor. No,
Not the actor. But
Orlando Wood.
Orlando Wood, when we're talking about like how things have become more stale, just in the way the way we're looking at a lot of the ads out there, and this study came off of the heels of that conversation, if I remember correctly. I'm like, well, ding, 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 there it is,
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
an incredible conversation.
It was really good. There's like one thing that I think it was you that was asking this question, and I was like, "Fuck, that's a good question." But it was kind
That's a
of like,
rarity.
no, it was really good. No, come on. But there's a question. I think it was. I think that the idea of it was like we look at things of doing benchmarking to an average. And you go, look, this is what all the competitors are doing. And so we'll do that. Like in, let's say, B2B, a lot of times like SaaS products come to
Right.
mind. Let's show the environment of which people work in and show our product in that. So a guy with a clipboard in a warehouse, let's say,
Right.
or with a scanner doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And our product serves those people. We need to put those kinds of ads in. And so everybody does that. And so you end up in this position where you're benchmarking against an average.
Yeah.
And the average is really generally pretty
Pretty
dull.
low.
And so then, like, I think it was you that asked this question where it was something like, well, are you putting your company at a higher risk for just doing the same thing that everyone else is doing? Because most of the time that's ignored.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a great question.
But like, if we think about it, it's, I don't know, Matt. Like, we look at our shared experiences, and then, you know, obviously a lot of the work that you're doing right now, the stuff that I'm subjected to, always looking over the fence, always. You know, what is a competitor doing? And I mean, I think that's what detracts and maybe what doesn't incentivize marketers as much as when you're being asked to just look across the street. What's happening on the other lemonade stand there? How are they promoting?
Yeah.
And it sucks the creativity out of the discipline in some capacity. Not in some capacity. Like it actually just sucks it out completely. So it's like, well, if this is all you're looking for, here we go.
Yeah.
But how are we differentiating ourselves?
Insert stock image here.
Exactly. Well, maybe AI can do this. We have something we can share with it and say, hey, I want you to create something like this.
Totally.
Right. And I think that becomes extremely difficult, different environment to operate in, because again, it's, you're not allowing yourself to be truly creative.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is interesting because you've got, I like the way that Adam framed it too, because there was that conversation he had at the beginning, or the part of the beginning of the conversation, I should say, is why they chose to do the cost of dull. And it was it was the fear of loss.
Yeah.
So they could have framed it as, we need to be more interesting, but the fear of loss is a more powerful motivator, which I think is really a smart idea, because you've got this idea, coming back to your question, like, well, if we just do the same thing that everyone else is doing, there's a legitimate chance of us just burning cash. And then we have to spend that much more to make our creative work the same as if we just invested a little bit more in creative, not even necessarily invested, just put more time into it.
Yeah.
To thinking about how to deliver it. It might actually cost the same as producing a dull ad.
Totally.
But it's just that process of trying to achieve something more stimulating than the average.
It's funny because like the biggest aha moment for me was when he outlined what I think was the 4 things that cause dull ads. The first one was
horsemen of the Dullpocalypse.
the 4 horsemen of the Dullpocalypse or whatever. Anyways, I can't word today.
Did you just say I can't word today?
I can't word today.
Yeah, so good.
Was performance. So it's essentially that obsession with short-termism.
Yeah.
Performance marketing, if you want to really take it back. The second is the subtle optimizations. Again, really tied to that performance marketing side. The notion of averaging.
Yeah.
Like it's just an average.
Yeah.
And then procurement. And he made this comment which made me laugh. It's like, creativity is not a pop-up toaster. I'm like, that's fair. You can't just go ask for it and there it is. Bing. Right? Yeah. You have to nurture it. You have to have the right platforms. You have to have all these other things in place to allow for this creativity to happen.
True.
Sequentially over time and consistently. And when I think about those 4 things, of course that you have this sea of sameness. How many people are investing, I don't know, call it 40 to 50% of their budget on performance marketing? Not saying you shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
How many companies are doing that? The majority are doing that.
Or probably even more.
Optimizations. Think about how many publishers are coming to these enterprises and saying, you need to be spending X on your branded keywords. You need to be doing these optimizations on these tactics.
Yeah.
So everyone's hearing the same thing.
Yeah.
What are you creating?
Yeah, and part of, a lot of these conversations that we've had recently are just kind of mixing together in a way. Because as you're saying that, I'm thinking about like, I wish I could remember where I heard this. I think it was on Fergus O'Carroll's podcast about optimizing to outputs,
right?
Versus optimizing for indicators.
Yeah.
And so and it's kind of related to Colin Powell's conversation that we had about that, why does a drunk look for his keys under the lamplight? Well, it's because that's where the light is. That's where light shines. And the same idea with data, like Google, Facebook, Meta, TikTok, all of them are producing data. So we look there.
Yeah.
But those are the indicators for the platforms.
Yeah.
They aren't the outputs that the business is looking for. So then we end up spending so much of our time looking at these indicators on the platforms and not necessarily at the outcomes for the business.
Totally.
And measuring a impact against that instead of these, where the light shines idea of platforms.
Yeah.
So then everybody's doing that and everybody starts optimizing towards those where the light's shining.
Yeah. Like ding, ding, ding. Like it just starts making sense. Like how we got here. Yeah, man, it's crazy. What else did I have here? Obviously, he talked about, similar to what Ella had, if you remember when we were talking to her about her. Jesus, really, I can't today. God.
It's okay.
Yeah, I can do this.
I believe in you. You're smart enough. You're strong enough. Gosh darn it, people like you.
Anyways, okay. Emotion and surprise are useful and creative. We've seen that time and time again. We've seen that coming out of even like System 1.
Yeah.
I have a note here saying, not a strategic question, should not just lean on the agency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, this goes back to, it's very easy to say, well, I hired this really fancy agency for these creative ideas and we're spending money on them. Like they should just be able to do this for us.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're pumping out ideas. Your ability to either be risk averse or not take it as a way to, because it doesn't, maybe looks different than what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to this internally, how you're actually receiving these ideas.
Yeah.
And then obviously constraints stimulate creativity, which I can get that.
Yeah. I do think that's one of the things just talked about is that I keep coming back to this Better Briefs project, where they talk about how people who write briefs think they're amazing at it. Like 90% of people that write briefs think they're awesome at it. And then you ask their agency partners, and they go, not so much. 10% agree.
10% agree.
It's a big gap. And I think some of that has to do with just the clarity of the strategy, which in some cases isn't necessary. It's an extension of the business strategy. So
that's true.
We are coming into Q4, and there's going to be a lot of people going through strategic planning sessions.
Yeah.
And I just rewatched Roger Martin's "A Plan Is Not a Strategy," and there's so much stuff about strategy in general that is convoluted. It's full of marketing gobbledygook or business gobbledygook, jargon and buzzwords and all that kind of stuff. And there's not a clear diagnosis of what the challenge is. Yeah, and so then you end up with a laundry list of things to do, and that's ends up in these creative briefs, which then comes up into the agency, and then the agency's like, what do I do with this? And so they try and fit all this stuff into a spot of some kind. And then it kind of, the process just washes out, and then you go through the gauntlet of approvals, and I can see how this all kind of relate. Like, it starts from a root cause of probably oftentimes poor strategy.
Poor strategy, but like I've also seen the reverse is a business can be so dynamic in the moment where something may happen and you're trying to pivot because you're getting ready to invest a boatload of money into some of these campaigns. Yeah. But who knows? Something happened in the industry itself where now you've been asked to pivot. So any work that happened, and I think this is where the absence of true strategy, right? Gets in the way of sometimes something like this. Technically, if you're trying your strategy as an organization, like I want to increase my market share or my market penetration by X points. And so marketing's taking that back. Okay, how are we going to do that? Here's the plan. You build a brand platform. You have some, campaigns that you want to build towards. That should always be consistent. Like that shouldn't change. Like whatever you're putting out in the market should be in service of that. Only when, though, a business may say, and this is where it's that short-termism comes in. It's like, we're struggling this quarter to meet profits. We need to cut budget. Or we need to rethink our strategy because our competitor now went out with a different message. Right. That's where you run into problem.
Right. Because then, to your point before, you're like, oh, look at that over the fence there. What are they doing over there? Look. Yeah, look. Oh, we should do that. That's cool.
We need a red shoe.
Yeah. But even to your point about, we need to increase market share by X points. Like, that's not a strategy. That's a wish.
Oh, totally.
Like it could be X, Y, or Z points. Who knows?
Yeah.
But if there's not a clear definition on, well, how are we going to do that? Like the diagnosis part.
That's why I love Rogers' framework,
agreed upon by everybody. Yeah. Then it makes it really hard. And then almost anything could fit. And then especially that's when you're influenced by, well, what are they doing? What are they doing? And so instead of what are we going to do?
That's why I love Rogers' framework.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's such an easy framework to follow that if your organization can align on it and say, this is it. That's how you can build, what is that 3, 5, 7 year view? And then again, we were talking about it with James, even most recently, with James Herman, was you build that consistency through a platform and like you know what you're doing, right? Like it doesn't have to change materially. And I think that's where, again, a lot of organizations, even at the enterprise level, get stuck. And it's hard to stick to one plan and kind of stay with it long time because we maybe perceive you're not being agile. You're not reacting to the moment. You're not reacting to the market.
You're fucking genius, Pete.
Whoa. I'll take it on this Friday
even though you
morning.
Can't word today.
I can't word today, but I'll take it.
Because that's a good point. I remember also there's a thing about Mark Ritson had said about two-speed marketing. And this is kind of speaks to the 595 rule, but also like performance and brand and all that, and boathism. Because you can have two almost operating systems. One is the short-term performance marketing. That's the stuff that you maybe are looking over the fence. What kind of offer they're offering? What kind of discount? What product they're featuring? All that kind of stuff. That's like your competitive intelligence and competitive, reactionary, agile speed. There's also the other speed, which is the 95, reaching the 95% of customers who are not in market today, knowing that they're not in market today, but they might be in the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months, however long that might be.
Sure.
Where it's a slower speed. You're less focused on reaction and more focused on what are we doing? Because you need that speed to build over time. And the more you change that, the less memory building you're doing.
That's a great point. My only caveat or my only push there is, in times of budget cuts, which of the two budgets usually gets cut? It's always
should be both.
It should be both, but usually what happens is like the slower burn stuff. So then again, you're back into this like reactive, not memory building. You're sending 5 emails in the same day to your email list. You're really kind of forcing the transaction as much as possible. And then even if you look at it from a tactic perspective, you're just leaning on those remarketing. Yeah. Are you ready yet? How about now? Remember this product that you viewed on our website? I'm going to chase you until you're blue in the face.
Buy
now. Urgency. You need a better CTA.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But even at that though, like this is where I say cut both, because that buy now thing, you're going to people who predominantly know you.
Yeah.
But if you need to get growth, like the people who know you are smaller percent of the population that could buy you. So you do need some amount of broader reach tactic.
You know what's this is very actually it's very timely, because right now going through this exercise where we've had to go through some budget cuts and things to that effect, which unfortunately has led us to remove a lot of our consideration and awareness tactics from the market. So we're really leaning on some of those high conversion tactics to kind of see us through. So we have this graph that we follow where you have your orders over site traffic, right? Okay. And the orders is just a line graph, and then the traffic is the bar graph. And what we're seeing right now is while our traffic or our orders are somewhat flat, like they're very stable, there's a big delta between our traffic volume, our order volume and our traffic. Our traffic is down, and it's showing like a really big decline. On the one hand, you can say, oh my goodness, you're converting at 2% right now. Chapeau, what are you doing tactically? It's like, well, shit, I only got search running, for example. And of course it's going to look really good because that's where a lot of intent is being shown. But we know there's going to be a point of diminishing return where we don't have enough new traffic visitors coming to the website to offset and drive more interest.
Right.
So it was literally a couple days ago, we're having this conversation, and I was asked by one of our leaders, well, when do you think that point of diminishing return is going to hit? And I calculated kind of a formula to be like, well, when do we think that would happen? And it really is like, we don't have more than 3 weeks. Now we're going to start seeing our conversion start dropping, because we had a couple campaigns that created this incredible halo effect. Budget cuts came in. You're focusing on conversion-based tactics. It's that point right now where it's like we have, and it's a natural lull going into October as well. Before your Black Friday, Cyber Mondays. It's crazy.
This is the thing with, I think, the performance focus. You end up almost like yo-yoing because you just see the thing in front of you instead of trying to create stability and predictability. You're just reactioning.
I love that.
Reactioning. So you're like constantly yo-yoing and like, oh my God, we're up. We're winning forever. Oh my God, we're down. Oh my God, we're gonna lose forever. And so then you're just constantly reacting to those ups and down swings. I mean, maybe that is what agile is about, but that sounds also insane.
It is insane, and
Thinking that will change if you're constantly reacting that way.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyways, it's
Fascinating.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
Yeah. All that because of dull.
That's right.
Not
Don't be
bad,
dull, people.
But I don't mean that. I mean your results. I just mean all of this
Wait,
conversation.
did you say I'm dull? Is that what you just said? Just kidding.
No, that was fascinating. Anyway,
Yeah.
I do think embracing risk. You did mention this. I just want to point this out. Embracing risk is actually, with more creative ads, you mentioned is a way to create more efficiency with your media buy. I think that's really smart.
What is risk? What is a responsible decision? What is? I don't remember. Sometimes I don't even understand my own notes. But I know Adam really wanted to emphasize a point about, making sure that you are taking those risks, because that's where, that's where a lot of, unique ideas can really come to fruition.
Yeah. It's liberating too, because the idea of like, we shouldn't take a risk because nobody else is doing it. Well, nobody else is also doing things very well most of the time.
Yeah.
And so that's a risk. Like, it's not an either or trade-off. Like, you're risking one way or the other.
Yeah.
So there's a thing there. Yeah. I think it's fascinating. It's a really interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks,
Thank
Adam.
you. Yeah, I was just going to say, thanks, Adam. Great conversation.
joining us.
Really appreciate you having on. And by the way, I think he also said he'd be more than willing to coming back on the podcast. Just saying.
Wow. Yeah.
Look at us.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to start mapping out our lineup next year. It's going to be great.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, buddy.
And
Well,
with that,
yes.
on this rainy Friday morning here in Calgary,
raining?
Alberta. Oh, yeah. You haven't seen outside, eh?
No, I'm sitting in my basement. It always looks the same.
Sea of sameness.
My basement office is very dull. Although I am enjoying my fake bamboo tree.
I mean, it brings out the colors in your eyes, my friend.
Thanks.
But I'm going to go try to pick some profitability myself.
Oh.
Actually, it's raining profits right now. That's even a better thing. It's raining profits. Just go and bask in all the not the profits.
Don't get hypothermia.
Yeah, please avoid that.
Okay, buddy. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good, man. Have a great day.
Ciao. Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.